Hello everyone, this is Anne from Odulcina Scrap. Today I'm doing the cover of a junk journal using the little snippet with the flowers, the hydrangea flowers that I did in last week's video. So just wanted to show you what I do with all of those embroidered snippets that I'm creating and that you might be creating on your site as well, how to use them and do something out of it. So let's do a junk journal cover. This junk journal cover, like this goes like that. It's a huge one. You can see with my hands. That's a big one, bigger than the typical 9x6. And I started with those Amazon envelope because I love the noise. So this is a cover that I've been working on like a couple of months ago. I didn't like the result, so I left it as is. So now I'm back to it today, and how it worked is I did kind of a cover that I'm removing right now, and I did the structure of the cover alone because I wanted to sew around, and I didn't want the sewing, the back of the page or the back of the cover, the sewing at the back to be showing. So I'm really working with two pieces. I'm doing the cover and the structure of the cover. So because I did that project a couple of months ago, I don't have the process of the beginning, but you're going to see most of the parts here are not sewn. And I'm going to just complete it. So I'm taking my snippet that I've created. That could be, you could use the same type of idea and use a label printed on fabric, a cute vintage lady printed on fabric, or even a paper, and you can do almost the same. So you're going to see that I'm sewing on my fabric cover, not through the structure, and at the end I'm gonna just glue that cover to the structure of the cover. So I'm keeping the structure of the cover under it, like the envelope, just because I always need to verify that it looks great all together to make sure I'm stitching at the good place. Because it's so soft and it's so full of doilies and laces that you see, I readjust it and I make sure that it looks okay, and then I do a couple of stitches again. This part is just slow stitching with a regular sewing thread, so nothing fancy there. And I'm doing kind of big stitches so they kind of show that they are end stitched. The layers of the doilies and the fabric under my embroidered snippet has been sewn here and there with my sewing machine so they can kind of hold together, but they are not stitched everywhere. It's just so they do not move. So by doing the slow stitching of the snippet, it's stitching them all together. So I did a little fast forward because you don't need to see all the stitches to understand the process. I know it's fun to watch, but it would be just too long because I'm not that fast. So as you see, I'm really working just sewing on the cover, it is soft, it is not so thick, and while I'm stitching that snippet, it's attaching all the layers of the doilies and the little laces here and there all together. And at the end, anyway, this will be glued on the structure, the envelope part behind there, so it will all hold well. But this is how I work to build up the whole cover. And if you like the shabby chic, you don't want it to be stiff, glued everywhere. You want it to be loose. You want to have some folds. You want to have some pieces of the doily that can flap a little bit, that you can move around a little bit. It's just the way it is. So you want them to hold well all together, but you want to keep some sort of a movement within it when you're looking at the page. So here I just used a tool that has little daisy on it, flower daisy, and a portion of a doily, and I just stitched them together with my sewing machine, creating folds while I was sewing. So I'm taking back that piece. I did it in the past, and I thought I would put like an amount, 3-4 flowers to hold them and stitch them all together. But I changed my mind now. I'm gonna just stitch that to my embroidered cluster, and I'm gonna create some folds to make sure it looks old and shabby and all the kind of stuff. So I'm just doing stitches. And if you look carefully, like let's say if you've never really done any hand stitching, when I do a big jump with my needle, it's always behind the fabric. So if you don't want to see big amounts of the sewing thread, you need to move the needle behind for a long distance, and then when you stitch back, you do a small stitch from the top, and then you do a big gap behind to move your needle at another spot where you want to do the end stitch. So really, you are doing a big distance with your needle behind the lace and the fabric, and from the top you always do a small stitch, because you don't want to show too much of the thread. So if you do the stitches like that, you don't worry too much because they don't really show, and it holds well all of your laces all together. I prefer that to glue because you don't have a hard spot of glue when it dries. So when I'm just working with fabrics like that and laces and doilies, I prefer to stitch them together instead of gluing them. If I add papers with them, that's different. But this one I want it to be soft. So this flower from the doily was heavy and was not holding well. So I'm going to give it 2 stitches just to make sure it doesn't flap with the gravity. So just 2 stitches there to hold it into place all the time, even if it goes against gravity when we look at the cover. And I would not do more than that. It's just to make sure that they stay on place, the parts that I really want them to stay on place. Look at that, it already looks great, but I'll keep adding layers, you're gonna see. And we are at the finishing touch, but I want to add some beads and some fancy laces. So we can stop there, but we can keep going on. Of course, we need a bow. So I've done the bow. I don't think you need to see me doing the little bow, but I'm trying to see if it fits well there, and I like it. So I'm gonna stitch it quickly with 2-3 stitches, and I could have used glue there, but my hot glue gun was not connected, and I didn't want it to wait, so I did the end stitched. But you could have definitively used the hot glue or fabric tack there, and that would have been maybe easier. Easier and faster, I should say. But here you go. This is how it is sometimes. I stitched it. There is something about end stitching, like the slow stitching and taking the time to kind of create something out of those laces and all those beautiful pieces of lace. It just makes my heart so happy. I love papers, but there is something special about laces and fabric as well. And this is why I just can't resist. And it seems like I tend to create my covers and envelopes more and more with more and more fabric and laces. There's just something there that talks to me a lot. What I'm end stitching right now is there was that doily that I just stitched. It was a bit too long, so I've trimmed the two of the flowers at the top, and I just re attach them to the cover at different places, so it kind of do the same color, the same flower at other spots around the embroidered snippet, and it it kind of complete the whole thing. Of course, if I don't have little flowers like that, maybe I would put like a white lace there just to balance the white versus the creams versus the beige. You know, you want to layer, you see all the whites, right? It's, you kind of balance the whites and the other ones. So now I'm at the not the end, but the finishing touches. I take my fancy laces, which are the Crafty Me Shop laces. They are more expensive than the Chinese ones, but they have a different quality, and that's why I love them so much. They are soft and they are well embroidered, if I can say. So I'm just doing the end stitched. And look at that. I'm moving the needle behind when I want to do the long distance, and I'm stitching back in close to where I ended. Then I go to another spot, I stitch close to where I was, and I move to a long distance. So I hope it's clear how I explain it for those who are not used to do end stitching. But this way you don't see the end stitched at all. It kind of holds by magic. So now I'm missing something there. I'm gonna add another cute piece of lace from Crafty Me Shop. Yeah, I'm just in love with those laces. I know I repeat myself all the time, but what can I say? They're my favorite. And by the way, if you live in Canada, she's from California in the USA. She ships internationally, so Canada for her it's international, and usually she ships the international packages once a month. So when she does a sale every week, and you can kind of order over 3 4 weeks for the same shipping cost, kind of. So just so you know, if you're afraid of the shipping cost, you just contact her to make sure she holds. She'll have you pay every order, but then at the end she's gonna ship them all together without adding more shipping fees, unless you've ordered so much that there's a new addition to the shipping fee. I'm cutting that flower there because it was falling just behind the lace. So instead of hiding it with the lace, I preferred to cut it, and I'm going to be able to use it somewhere else. I know sometimes I watch videos and they just stack and glue over and over, and I'm like, oh, that cute lace behind is totally ruined. Like, you don't see it anymore. But hey, that works for them, but I'm too cheap for that. I cannot waste a lace behind that is so cute. So if I can cut a piece of lace that I know nobody will know that it's not there anymore, it doesn't affect my overall look. I cut a piece of the lace and I have it for another project or another part of my project, because we all know that even a tiny piece of a couple of centimeters or even an inch is still useful and great. So if I can keep them, I do. That's my tip. So that way you make the most out of your laces. So again, if you watched carefully how I'm doing my end stitching, I move my long distance behind the lace, and when I'm at the top and I want to go back in, I do a little stitch and I go a long distance behind and I go back in close to where I was getting out, if that makes sense. I'm almost done, and then I'm gonna add some beads, because when you think it's almost done, this is where you look at your project and you think, can I add a little charm, a little button, some beads somewhere? So this is how I work in layers, and in layers of kind of things that I put. Like I'll start with the big laces that I don't care too much, and then more that it go, more that the pieces are small and more valuable and more pretty, and then at the end you add a bow, beads, buttons, that kind of stuff. It is already gorgeous. I wanted to show you a close up, because sometimes we look at videos and it just goes too fast for me. I would watch that longer than what it's shown. That flower that I recovered and I cut, I'm gonna use it to kind of remove that circle that was empty. It looked great, but now that I have the flower, I thought I could put it there, and with a little portion of cheesecloth, it's kind of the folds within the cheesecloth is just perfect for a shabby chic style. So I'm just end stitching like 3-4 end stitched, and that's it. So for the cheesecloth, I'm gonna put the link in the description below to what it is on Amazon, because I'm being asked a lot which cheesecloth I'm buying. The brand doesn't really matter. It's really just like you need a grade 90, so the holes are not too big. And then when you get that cheesecloth, it's all ironed and all flat. You take a piece, you cut a piece that you want, you put it into the water, few seconds just to make it wet, and then you squeeze it and you let it dry in like in a ball shape. So you shape it to a ball to make sure it has tons of folds, and you let it dry. Sometimes a couple of hours later I'll pass by and I'll reshape my ball of cheesecloth. And when I do that, I create a couple of balls all together on a plate and I'll let them dry. And those folds are kind of more natural. So now it's time to add some beads. So I had 3 choices of colors. So I did my testing. I've put the 3 different ones, and I've decided one that is more the white one, but those 3 choices were good. As you can see, I removed the cover from the structure, the envelope cover, because now all those laces from the cover, they are holding well, and I just need to stitch the beads to the lace, but the lace is already holding well and won't move. So now I can grab the cover a different way. It's less important. So I'll just stitch those beads. And it's a fancy finishing. Beads are so cheap, and it creates a big impact or effect, like, and it makes your cover or your project look so luxurious. We tend to forget to use beads, but really we should use them even more than buttons. They're cheaper than buttons, and they are easier to find too, to my own opinion. So I tend to use a lot of beads, as you can see, even if I have tons of buttons. The thing I don't like about buttons is that I don't like to put them without a thread in their holes, and threading the buttons is taking forever. So I tend to skip the buttons, but and I use beads instead, but both would be good. Here you go. And when I add beads like that, this is where I realize, oh boy, there's more flowers there in that applique lace than I thought. But what I'm doing right now, I know you don't have a close-up to my cover, but it's I'm adding a bead in the middle of each flower from the applique. I think I'm gonna do a close-up later on, so you're gonna see well what I'm talking about. But every flower there will have a little bead in the middle. We are done with the little beads, so look at that. Doing a little close-up for you so we can see the little flowers there. Isn't it awesome? I know I did that, but anyway, I think you have the same kind of taste like me for those laces. It's not just being able to do a journal cover, it's having the good laces in hands too, I just find. For this journal cover, I kind of used all of my cutest laces and doilies that I had. I have more than that, but they were all like really to my taste. Now what I want to do, because that cover is kind of special and really fancy, I don't want to sew a signature. I want to have a floating signature. So I am taking a sari silk, and you could see I was measuring, and because I don't want the sari silk to kind of fold the lace, I'm gonna put an eyelet. Anyway, that envelope is a little bit too big, so I can put my eyelets a little bit inside the cover, and I'm going to show you with a paper that the whole paper, the letter size paper, the one that I'm using, will fit totally inside my two eyelets, like that. So I'm to make sure I'm using a paper, and I can see that I can put my eyelet there, and the paper will still be able to be inserted without any fold. So I'm putting an eyelet just to make sure that it's gonna hold well, like the fabric won't be tearing apart with time. And I need to put my sari silk there before gluing the cover to the structure of the cover, because otherwise it's going to show from the outside of the cover, and I don't want that. So my sari silk is there, and it's now time to apply the cover to the structure. Wrong side, so double check yourself all the time. So now I'm going to place my cover correctly, looking at all that, and I'm going to use my hot glue there. Fabri-Tac would have been okay too. I just love the hot glue because it dries so fast and it's so cheap. So as you can see, I'm not adding a ton of glue. I'll just put glue here and there, and I use my spatula to kind of make sure that my glue will dry flat as much as possible. In order to do that, you need to do just little pieces at a time. If you do too big pieces of glue, it will kind of start drying before you flatten the glue, so then you're gonna have bulks of glue in you. Like this is a big portion, but there's so much layers on top that I know even if there's a little bulk of glue, it's not that bad. But if you go with try to glue something that is really thin, this is where you really want to do a little piece at a time, glue it, flatten with the spatula, and move to another section. I'm applying the glue on the sewing lines there just to make sure they do not show through the fabric, as you can see. So this is my technique to glue my cover. I'm trying to follow some lines where there's lines of sewing or the middle of the flower, something like that, just to make sure that the glue won't show. And I'm not applying glue everywhere. It doesn't need to have that much of glue. If we add glue everywhere, we just put too much, and then we won't have a soft cover. We will have like a cover that has a lot of hard spots because of the hot glue. So it depends which style you like, right? But this is how I like it. So that's why you see me applying little bits of glue here and there. And here you go. This is the cover. And inside, I left my sari silk longer. I can trim it down later on when I'll be ready. But for now, this is the cover that I've done. And then I can create a floating signature, insert it behind the sari silk there, undo the bow and redo it with the signature there. And then when my signature is all written down, I can switch it to another one. This is what I love about a floating signature. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.